Now it says live.
There we go. Okay. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Labor Live at 5, or Labor Live AF, as we're affectionately known. Tomorrow's the funeral of George Floyd, and we have been experiencing amazing goings-on in this country. The world has changed in ways that I don't think any of us could even have imagined, even 2 weeks ago. People are in the streets. People are demanding fundamental changes in ways that didn't seem even possible just a short time ago. So this moment presents particular challenges and opportunities for the labor movement in particular. And the intersection of race and the labor movement and economic justice for every working person in this country is something that I think I think we all need to pay attention and really think these issues through. And so can't imagine a better person to be able to talk about it with than our guest tonight. Claude Cummings is the District Vice President for Communication Workers of America, District 6. District 6 covers 5 states, including Texas. But Claude also leads the National Civil and Human Rights Committee of CWA and is on the board of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. And he's agreed to spend some time with us here tonight to talk through these issues. And Claude, welcome. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Man, thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled and honored to be able to make a few points about what I think is going on. And certainly we're in uncharted waters right now. I don't think any of us have, I haven't at least anyway, lived to see anything what is taking place today. In your comments a couple of minutes ago, I thought about a quote from Benjamin Franklin. He said, "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are." And to be quite honest with you, that's what's happening right now. Of course, I came up through the civil rights movement, and I know that there were, of course, labor leaders involved and some Anglos that were involved during those period of times, but nowhere near the level that we have right now. So it appears to me that those that have not been affected by some of the things that have happened in the African-American community now understand, after watching a gentleman that might not have been a model citizen, because I've heard many people say that, and I don't care whether he was a model citizen or not, the fact that for 8 minutes, an officer of the law, someone who has taken an oath to take care of us, actually laid on his body, kept his knee on his neck until he passed away. And we all had an opportunity to see that. Normally you see the results of police action, but this time we had an opportunity to view it all. Now, with that being said, I want to make sure I'm clear. I respect police officers. I respect what they do. And for someone to say that all police officers are that way, I would argue with, and argue until, as the old folks would say, the cows come home, right? Because all police officers are not bad. But let's face it, we do have some that I believe are racist in nature, to be quite honest with you. And there are a number of things I feel like need to happen in order to fix this. But certainly, the outrage that is taking place right now from not just people of color, but from white people, from women especially, we heard him cry out, I think is unprecedented in this day and age.
Claude, what do you make of the fact that 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a year ago, somebody making the proclamation that Black Lives Matter was seen as a controversial statement? And was met with all lives matter or blue lives matter, and now there's this almost universal, not universal obviously, but certainly there is a deep realization among people now of the power of that statement. And I think that the people in the streets have created space for that conversation.
I think what has happened, Rick, is people have looked in the mirror. And said, what, everybody's doing a self-examination about how they feel about race in general and how they feel about what they actually saw. Because many times people look, as I stated a couple of minutes ago, at the history of an individual, and let's face it, all of us at one time or another could have been stopped or arrested for one thing or another, right? And so when I said that Mr. Floyd was not a model citizen, I didn't mean to imply anything other than, right, he was a person that wasn't a Claude Cummings that had never been arrested, because I've never been arrested, and things of that nature, right? But I'm not judging anybody. The truth of the matter is, regardless of what type of life you have lived and what type of confrontation you have with a police officer, it should never end like that. Yeah. Simple as that. And so I think that there's a whole lot of self-examinations that are going on. And finally, people are beginning to see what people of color, have been through in this country, especially when it comes to over-policing, right? Economic injustice, because all of those things are beginning to be talked about now. It's more than just about, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later and what the labor union could do, but you're hearing statements like social justice, economic justice, and things of that nature, And I've got, examples I can give you, but I think the self-examination that is going on right now is what has brought about the change. Even the statement by the NFL commissioner now. Look at how that's all been turned around now,
I know. I mean,
as a matter of fact, one of the things that the NFL ought to do is hire Kaepernick somewhere.
There you go. As commissioner, never mind quarterback, he could be the commissioner.
Right, commissioner, right. But look at how that has changed. Okay, look at how some of the other statements have changed. Look at how police officers that know that was an injustice are speaking out themselves on how that was handled. So I think there's a lot of self-examinations that are going on, and people are really beginning to think, how am I and how do I actually feel when it comes to race relations in this country?
Let me ask you one question, Claude. I would really be interested in your perspective on this question. This happened. This murder happened after we've been dealing with the COVID pandemic. And we were seeing that the COVID pandemic is affecting communities of color far deeper than it is Anglo communities. It's affecting working class communities far beyond our numbers in the society.
Right.
And add to that just the drumbeat, the racist drumbeat of this president for 4 years, and the inability to hold him accountable because of all the enablers he has in the Republican Party and the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress. And it's almost like there's this sense that there's this welling up of clarity in our vision that this is just wrong. And it's almost like this moment has combined all three of those things into one, and that to really solve any of these issues, to solve COVID, to solve police brutality, to solve economic justice, we have to deal with all of them. And that kind of feels to me charge of the labor movement. What is your kind of reaction to that?
My personal feelings, the time that we are in right now, in my opinion, based on the pandemic, based on the uprisings in this country, probably the worst since the civil rights movement. I'm sorry, not civil rights movement, but the Civil War. The Civil War, to be quite honest with you, the Civil War. The number of lives that have been affected. And again, to hear people talk about social justice change, criminal justice change, economic justice change. Listen, my father was an 11th grader. Okay. He got a job. He didn't finish the 11th grade. He got a job with AT&T. He started out as a janitor. He moved from a janitor into a communications technician job. I would consider my family a middle-class family. Simple as that. My dad had a good salary. He had good health care. When we talk about the way that COVID is affecting people of color, it's because they do not have access to good health care. As simple as that. Like I do, and like my family did, when I was coming up. So you hear these terms now: economic justice, financial equality, things. What better organization to tackle those issues than the labor movement? Simple as that. I think that this is a perfect storm for us, for the labor movement. I think that we should, once Mr. Floyd is buried and the emotion of him dying and things out of the way, we should start some type of campaign to talk to people of color, right, about how the labor movement can work to take on these issues of inequality, how the labor movement can take on these issues of economic justice, how the labor movement can take on criminal justice reform, all of those things that we fight about, you know, and that we represent our members on a daily basis. And so this is a time when the labor movement really take a look at itself, because listen, we've got some issues we need to change. We need more people of color in leadership positions. And I'm not at all advocating moving anybody out. But I think that when there are opportunities to place people of color in positions, when you look at our membership, the membership is changing in this state, is changing in this country, right? The majority of members who are joining now are people of color, right? And so we need to put people in positions that look like them and that can help us organize even more, because the labor movement is the only organization in this country, right, that can fix the issues going on with economics differences between ethnicities. The labor movement.
So let me ask you this, Claude, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I am going to ask you this.
Put me on the spot.
All right, I'll put you on.
Put me on the spot. I hope I'm making sense to everybody.
You referenced it in your comments, and that is, we have some work to do as a movement to put ourselves in a position to do that. And I guess I would ask, I think one of the things that's happening is there is a lot of self-examination going on, among every aspect of our society. And I think to be honest, I think we have to do that ourselves. And I just wonder what your reaction is to that.
We need to do that ourselves, but also I think that those of us that are people of color that are in positions need to make sure our brothers and sisters understand that we just didn't step into these positions. Some of you know me as Claude Cummings, vice president of this union, who's doing great political work. First African-American president in Houston, first African-American president of the district. But what y'all don't know is that I caught hell running for all those positions. I had people look me after 12 years of being a vice president of Local 6222, after I decided to run for president, I actually had to be walked out by police officers to my car the night I was nominated to be president of Local 6222. A lot of you don't know that. There was actually a fist fight. And there were individuals that I had helped get employed. I'd help their children get employed, but they did not want to see me become president of Local 6222. They said, "You're doing great as a vice president. You don't need to be a president of our union." That's what was said to me. And the same thing happened when I ran for this position. All type of nasty things, ugly things were said about me. But the difference between me and some others that get angry and get somewhat adversarial in nature is that I just did not allow that to stop me from what I felt like my task was, and that was to become the president of the local, is to become the president of the vice president of this district. So yes, and when I took this position, there were no people of color and no women in any administrative position in my district. And so what I was able to do, now I was wise in the way I did it, because I understand clearly that one of the things that was said about me is that if I was elected to this position, I would paint the whole district black, and there'd never be any more white people in any positions in CWA District 6. The first 3 promotions I made were white, 2 white men and a white woman, okay? 2 years after that, I started promoting African Americans, and there was a rumbling start. See, we told you what he was going to do. And at my first district meeting, after I made those promotions, I placed on a board the first 3 promotions that I made when I got elected. And the room just got quiet. And they understood, what I did it, how I did it, why I did it. And so my point is, now I've made change. People have been able to view that just because we have people of color in positions, we're negotiating in many cases, better contracts than some have been negotiated before. And work is getting completed, organizing is being done, political work is being done. And we have a diverse staff doing that, right? And so when I say we need to take a look at ourselves, we need to take a look at we need to make sure that we have, when we have opportunities, again, not forcing anybody out, but when we have opportunities to make our leadership look like our membership, we should do that. Yeah. And that will help us with our organizing efforts, and it will help us with some of the racial issues that are taking place, not just outside of the labor movement, but also inside the labor movement.
Claude, in y'all's union and as part of the Civil Rights Committee, do y'all talk directly about these issues in your union?
Do. Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, the CWA, the statement that CWA released was a pretty strong statement. And to my surprise, there has not been a lot of pushback on it. Not only did we address the issue of Mr. Floyd, but we just addressed racism in general. And listen, the kind of things that are going on that we've been talking about, those are not fairy tales. That's not fake news. I mean, these things have actually been happening to people.
Yeah, that's what they say. I mean, these, in a lot of ways, these have been happening for a long time. Just we now
in 1970, and I would ask you guys who like sports cars to go back and research a 1970 Rally 350 Oldsmobile, yellow, beautiful car. My father,
bright yellow,
man. Yellow, bright yellow, man, with black hood stripes. Okay. My father bought me that car when I was in college, and I got stopped by a police officer. I was not speeding, just cruising along, enjoying the music. And he stopped me and pulled me over and asked me, "Boy, what the hell are you doing in a car like this?" And I said, "Officer, my father bought it for me." He said, "Your dad can't afford a car like this. You stole it." I said, "No, officer, no, I didn't. It's my father purchased it for me." I think it would have been worse. Every time he asked something, I said, "Yes, sir," "No, sir," right? And I kept my hands on top of the steering wheel because that's what my dad taught me. But at the end, he left that conversation saying, "You know what? If I see you coming down the street again, I'm going to drop it in your ass." Now, just like that. Yeah, he said that to me, right? I didn't get adversarial. I just said, "Yes, sir." And I moved on. Nowadays, a lot of these kids are just not, and I hate it because it causes them to be in a worse situation than they should, get aggravated and adversarial with police officers when they have that kind of, confrontation. What I say to young people is that when you have when you're with a police officer, you have some type of situation where you're with a police officer, you just want to make sure you leave that situation alive. That's the most important thing. And just a couple of days ago, I was speaking and I raised the question. I said, "How many of you have talked to your young men or your boys about how they should address police officers if they're stopped?" And of course, my white friends raised their head. Yeah, Claude, all of us have done that. I said, "Yeah, but for different reasons. You do it and tell your sons to be nice so they won't get a ticket. We tell our sons to be nice so they won't get killed." That's a big difference, huge difference. And Rick, let me just say this. I get asked the question all the time, "Claude, when is this stuff going to stop? How are we going to fix this?" I think everybody that's listening to me needs to understand clearly that racism is a taught behavior. It's taught. Babies don't come out of the womb racist. My kids grew up in the Klein Forest area, went to Klein Forest High School, predominantly white school. They are still friends with the kids that they graduated with because their parents, and Ruth and I led the parent association over there, right? A PTA. But they still get along because their parents didn't teach them racist behavior, right? It's a taught behavior. Yeah. And for those that we did have problems with, it's because they taught them bad behavior. We didn't treat my children didn't treat one white kid differently than they treated another white kid. They treated their kids based on the way they were treated, right? So it's a learned behavior, which means it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. Now we need to take all of this energy that's taking place around the country. And we need to continue to get people to understand that it's not going to happen overnight, and that we've got to channel this energy toward the elections and elect people that will change policies, right, on over policing of African Americans, right, and will pass laws on anti-racism, because that's what needs to happen, in this country to make change. That's the only way it's going to change.
So, Claude,
cities voting to get rid of police officers, that's the most insane thing I ever heard before in my life. That's not going to fix this, And our children also understand, these young people also understand now. So I'm clear when I say voting. They also understand that voting, because some of them said to me, Claude, we voted, and we still voted. Well, they understand clearly that voting is not going to stop a police officer being on the neck of a Mr. Floyd and killing him. But we got to get them to understand that electing people in office that will change policies, right, and change laws to stop it. That's what we've got to, and we've got to hold them accountable, those that we elect, to do that.
So, Claude, duck your head for a second.
Okay.
There you go. There's somebody behind you kind of looking at you.
That's what keeps me sane. Occasionally, I just turn around and take a look at that picture.
What are y'all going to do to change the occupant of the White House?
Well, we got a lot going on. CWA is going to spend quite a bit of money, and I think you know this, going to be spending quite a bit of money in Texas to make sure that we win Texas. We are concentrating, and I am specifically, and you know this through our IE work, helping change Texas. Yeah. Because I am focusing on getting out the African-American vote. We had 11% of African-Americans, 11% less that voted in the last election than in the previous election.
Wow.
We got to fix that. We got to get that 11% African Americans back to the poll, and we win. We win the White House, and we win it easily, by the way. And I think what is going on today with this, my God, a president, ordered the military to take action against the citizens of this country. How horrible! How many of us have seen that in our lifetime? I haven't. That's just absolutely ridiculous. And so we've got to get to the poll. We've got to vote. And in my district, wherever we can put together IE programs, and we have the resources, and we're doing that with donors, not just with CWA money, but also with other donors that see the injustice that's taking place with this president. We will win. And we will win, in my opinion, we'll win the Senate. I'm predicting that we'll win the Senate, we'll hold the House, and we'll win the Senate, and we'll win the presidency.
Okay. You heard it here first on Labor Live at 5 from Claude Cummings. Claude, what do we need to do, I guess, to close it up? What do we need to do to make sure that we translate the outrage and translate the energy into lasting measures that will really impact people's lives in a positive way?
Well, I think, again, there's police, police departments need to do a self-examination. I think, so let me just address that for a minute. I think that there ought to be better background checks on police officers. We need to immediately ban neck restraints. We need to stop no-knock warrants. We need more dialogue, I think, police officers and their leaders with community leaders, and we need a citizens review board. Those are things I think the unions should push, and we need to publicly, talk about those things, because that's going to immediately bring attention to us, because again, we also represent police officers. So again, this is why I'm saying all police officers are not bad. And that's the idea I heard this morning, and I wish you and I talked about it earlier, but really someone needs to address it, that police officers, unions are the ones that are policing, the protecting bad police officers, and that's just absolutely false. Police officers have a right, regardless of how they're charged, to have their union represent them, just like we have members that do bad things and we represent them, right? It doesn't mean we're going to leave them out to dry because they do, bad things. But I think that it's important that the general public, and especially people of color, know that if they want to actually fix inequality in this country, if they want a better economic situation in their lives and their households, like my dad had back in the 60s and 50s with us, where we had good health care. You know, man, my brothers are in pretty good shape. You know, I mean, we didn't have any problems going to the doctor, right? I didn't have any problems getting money from my mother and father when I needed it, because he had a good job with good benefits and he retired with a good pension. If they want to change the way their lives are now, what better organization to do it than the organization that built the middle class? I consider myself a middle class. My father was a middle class father, you know, and leader of our family. And that's how you do it. So we need to really, in my opinion, have a push or some type of marketing campaign to express our views that we want change. We don't support, you know, what happened to Mr. Floyd. But if you want better standard of living for yourself, you know, if you want to change some of these conditions that you're living in, no better organization to do it than the union. Get on a unionized job, and if you're on a job that's not unionized, organize.
There you go. Yeah,
something like that. Organize. You know, organize, mobilize. Because let's face it. Let's all face it. Things don't change in this country unless there's a movement. And right now, there's a movement taking place like never before.
You got
to take advantage of it. We need to take advantage of it.
Need to take advantage. We need to put our shoulder to the wheel all together, Claude.
Exactly.
And, I think the moment there's so much possibility, but we have to be real about doing the work that it's going to take to really take it to the next level. So,
right.
Thank you so much for your work, Claude, for your leadership, and for, I think, as you'll see in the comments, for keeping it real. People respect that.
Right. Thank you. Well, I'm just going to tell it like it is.
Anything you want to say in closing, Claude?
No, it's just that, as you know, I don't think that I've dealt with a lot of brothers and sisters, you know, in the labor movement over the years. I think they respect me. I respect them. What I haven't done, and I've told others that are leaders in the labor movement, we have not talked about what we have gone through to get where we are. We've never done that. You know, I think what happens is we don't have enough dialogue about some of the things that have taken place. I will end, if I may, with this last story about my son, just so y'all are really, and I think y'all really feel where I'm coming from when I tell you this. Most of you know that my son is a pastor. As a matter of fact, some of you have tuned into him on Sundays. About 3 years ago, his wife is a baker. And about 3 years ago, his wife asked him to go to a store that he wasn't familiar with to pick up some ingredients for a cake that she was baking. And he wasn't familiar with the street, wasn't familiar with the area that the store was in. And so he programmed his GPS. And as GPS do sometime, it told him to turn after he passed the street. Okay. Or maybe he was going too fast. I don't know. But anyway, he immediately knew that he had missed the street. And so he pulled over into a parking lot. When he pulled over in that parking lot, there were two police officers coming from the opposite direction that saw him. They immediately turned on their lights, stopped traffic, swerved over in the parking lot where he was, pulled in behind him. They both got out of their cars, guns drawn.
No.
Guns drawn. One on the passenger side, one on the driver's side, with their guns drawn at the window. And he rolled down the window. Of course, he had his, you know, he kept his hand up and, you know, pushed the button, said, officer, I'm rolling the window down, you know. He said, what did I do? He said, well, we saw you swerve. He said, yes. He said, well, we thought you were getting ready to flee. He said, yeah, but I haven't. I'm right here. I'm not fleeing. So why are your guns drawn? They put the guns back. They took his driver's license, checked it, told him to go off and have a great day. After this, you know, they didn't check him before, right? You know, and so my point is, what if my son had been adversarial? What if he'd gotten belligerent, right? I mean, that could have easily turned into a worse situation. But that was nothing but racial profiling, because he didn't flee, you know, he didn't run off, he didn't jump out the car and run after they came behind him, right? So those are the kind of things that we've had to live with. And I've never told that story to any of you brothers and sisters, you know, that are listening. And they're, you know, some of y'all probably didn't even know about the different things that I went through as a to get elected to these offices, because it was not easy. It was horrible, some of the things that were said about me by my white brothers and sisters. Many of them I helped get employed. Okay. So I think if we talk more about our experiences with each other, not in an adversarial way, but just as an informative way, people have a better understanding of what we've gone through and why sometimes you see the anger. Now, thank God he's given me the ability to control my anger and my hurt over the years, right? But a lot of people are not like that. And so unfortunately, when people that are not African-American see that anger, because of some of the things that we've gone through, it's automatically termed as, the guy is just angry. He's got anger management problems, but some of us can just hold it in better than others. Okay.
And Claude, that is such a powerful story, Claude. And I think that when we all sit and we listen and we hear what our brothers and sisters' lives are like, and it puts everything in a completely different context. And that's the power of our stories.
Right.
And that's the power of our solidarity. And that's true solidarity, which is sitting and being with a brother or sister in pain and listening and being there for them. Right. And I feel like that is something that we have to commit ourselves to doing much more of.
Much more.
But when we center our actions in the stories and lives of our members, that's when we can be true warriors for justice.
Right. The stories we hear from groups that we're trying to organize that tell us about all the injustice that happens in the workplace and stuff, our stories are just as important as those stories from those individuals we're trying to organize. And we need to have more dialogue, about it.
That's it. Well, Claude, I know you got like 1,000,007 things going on right now in Houston and all the work that you're doing, but just thank you so much for adding your voice to our story here.
Well, thank you.
And, obviously we'll continue to work together, but thank you for all the work you do for the labor movement and for the Texas AFL-CIO and for my union, the Communication Workers of America. So,
right. Thank you. And let me say this. Thank you. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Rick, for everything. And I want to thank all the brothers and sisters. Let me just say this in closing, that I've never felt a racist moment from any of the officers in the AFL-CIO in Texas or any other place. So I appreciate the respect that you've shown me. And I hope you appreciate the respect that I've shown you as great labor leaders. So thank you.
100%, my brother.
All righty.
Have a good night. Thank you, Claude.
Take care.
All right.